Hello and welcome back to another 3 a.m. production video. This is the visual podcast where I draw some of your favorite characters or characters you haven't even heard of while talking about animation, comic books, etc., etc. If you're just joining us, welcome, and if you are one of my subscribers, thanks for coming back. If you want to follow along with today's video, I posted the construction lines down in the community section of the YouTube page, so you can screenshot, download, or however that works, and print it out and follow along. If you do follow along, please post in the comments below. I'd love to see how it comes out. So this week's episode actually takes inspiration from about a month ago. I was at MegaCon, and I was dressed up like Batman. I was stopped by some influencers who wanted to make a video, and they didn't tell me what the video was going to be about, but I agreed, and they started interviewing me as Batman. In the midst of that interview, they tried to get my goat and basically lose my cool to reveal that I, in fact, as Batman, like the killing rule. That as Batman, I go around killing my criminals in dark alleys when no one's watching and play the Caped Crusader in front of everyone. Now, I did not lose my cool, and I answered every single one of those questions as if I were Batman. Which leads me to this video. Batman has long been shrouded in the mystery of his no-killing rule ever since his debut, where he did appear with guns, and he wasn't above killing criminals, or them accidentally dying. But over the course of this character's history, it's this no-killing rule that has become so ingrained in the history of this character that it's allowed him to succeed in areas where other heroes do not. It makes him more interesting than, say, characters like Punisher, because the true compassion that this character has knows no bounds. They usually neglect this rule when it comes to the cinema and movies, because it's cooler, air quotes, when the villain gets to die on screen. Now, in comics, you can make the excuse it's just so that they could have reoccurring characters, and that is part of it. But for Batman itself, it's a lot more than that. It's about what he went through and making sure that no one else has to experience the pain and loss that he went to. Man across the multiverse and within his own canon and continuity of Batman that don't mind killing and how it makes them different and how it really doesn't make them Batman. So without any further ado, grab your pencils, grab your bat signals, and let's go for it. Kicking us off today, we're going to be talking about the Earth 3 Batman, Owlman. Now, this Earth is very different from the DC continuity everybody all knows and loves, because it's quite literally the opposite. It's quite so to the fact that even the internal organs of all of these characters are on the left side, if they're on the right, and vice versa. But good is bad, bad is good. So all the supervillains that we know and love, like Lex Luthor, the Joker, they're all the good guys of this universe, whereas the villains are all the heroes we know and love, except slightly different. Clark Kent, Ultraman, is the leader of this crime syndicate, and Owlman is one of his basically leading members alongside him, and he's the brains of the crime syndicate. Decked out with the latest high-tech gadgetry and armor, he's the only one on the team that doesn't have superpowers. And although the crime syndicate doesn't really trust each other all that much because they're all bad guys, they do have a mutual respect, which is how they're able to keep balance within their world. Because they basically run governments out of fear. Now, when Owlman was a kid, he witnessed a very similar tragedy that Bruce Wayne saw, except there's two versions of this tragedy. One in which he witnesses his parents die, and his brother, Bruce. Yet, plot twist, it isn't even Bruce Wayne, it's Thomas Wayne Jr., long-lost brother that in regular continuity either passes away before Bruce was even born, or in some continuities gets hidden away in a mental facility until he grows up, unbeknownst to Bruce Wayne, gets adopted by a criminal organization and turned into a criminal. Now, in these two versions of event, Thomas Wayne Jr., if he witnesses his parents die, in one version, it's because Thomas Wayne is being asked to be escorted by a policeman, and the policeman opens fire when Thomas Wayne refuses, killing his parents and his brother. Because it was the hands of a policeman, he goes out against law enforcement, branding himself into the criminal, trying to get revenge for his parents. When he discovers that Thomas Wayne may have had ties to the mob and actually been a criminal himself, he decides to fully go into what he thinks the Wayne legacy is, becoming a criminal. In another version of events, he's actually the one who tried to convince his brother Bruce to kill his parents, and when his younger brother failed to do so, Alfred stepped in and killed him for him. He ultimately wanted Bruce to become his sidekick, but when Bruce pretty much refused, he killed his brother. Now, Owlman has all the skills and high-tech gadgetry that Batman does, except he has no moral compass. He doesn't care about life. Matter of fact, he usually has the philosophy of
every decision we make is meaningless. Because somewhere, on a parallel Earth, we've already made the opposite choice. We're nothing. Less than nothing.
and is often very bored with the day-to-day villainy and is constantly trying to find things to actually entertain himself. I mean, he's dating Superwoman in this universe, who is equally as sadistic as he is, but it's all just incredibly mundane, and even sponsors rebellions that go against the crime syndicate just to give them some sort of challenge and resistance in their day-to-day operations, in opposition to Ultraman, his universe's version of Superman. Owlman is also prone to taking drug enhancement to make sure that his mind is always firing in all cylinders, making him the smartest guy in the room always. Owlman even has his own little twisted family dynamics within the Bat family, whereas in his career as Owlman, he came across a young Dick Grayson who had just lost his parents to a tragedy and had taken him in trying to replace his brother Bruce, forming a similar bond to what he had as a kid, making him Talon instead of Robin. Unfortunately, that Dick Grayson is killed, and when Owlman and the Crime Syndicate came to regular continuity Earth for Batman, they went to Arkham Asylum and sprung all the inmates and ended up kidnapping Nightwing and revealing his identity on national television when Dick Grayson wouldn't join him to be his new Talon, and Nightwing was presumed dead in that incident, but in actuality went undercover as a spy and got a new identity just so he could figure out what he could do until his identity could be reinstated as Nightwing. They ended up making an animated movie with this character. Popular Justice League members such as Superman, Green Lantern, Flash, Wonder Woman, Batman, so on and so forth, go up against their doppelgangers in this alternate reality, in which Batman and Owlman end up slugging it out for the fate of all universes, because Owlman has constructed a doomsday weapon that, if it's put on Earth Prime, will completely eradicate all of existence. Owlman is going up against our Batman, and seemingly has him matched in the combat department just because of the armor. But Batman points out the reason that Owlman will never win, and the biggest difference between them.
I feel the same way.
If we're really alike, you know this is wrong. You must have been a good man once.
No, not good. Never good. After all, I'm only human. No more debate. I'm going to kill you now, then everyone else.
There is a difference between you and me. We both looked into the abyss. But when it looked back at us, you blinked.
And it's that preservation of life that puts Batman on top. He will always do whatever he has to preserve life, whereas Owlman has no reason for fighting because he has no reason for existence. He was willing to erase himself just to find meaning in that there's no meaning.
It doesn't matter.
As for our next Batman, you guys ever heard of the butterfly effect, where if you move a stone or crunch a flower in a time where you shouldn't exist, you ripple through that timeline and screw everything up for everyone else everywhere?
I told you!
The Flash found that out the hard way.
You have 9 more fingers. I suggest you tell me how you found out about me.
In my world, I'm a hero, named the Flash. Bruce took me here, showed me...
I used to be a doctor. Mention my dead son again, and I will break out my surgical instruments.
When he was so overcome with grief and had all of this power that he figured he could save everyone. So he ran back in time to save his mother from a horrible, horrible death and keep his dad from being blamed for it and going to prison, that he created a time where he never became the Flash. But because he put in a trajectory where he never became the Flash, he also sent the ripples of other things happening that maybe shouldn't happen. For example, in Crime Alley, when Joe Chill came to murder Thomas and Martha, he didn't. He murdered Bruce Wayne. And in the tragedy of losing their son, Martha, she laughed herself into hysteria and became the Joker of this universe. And Thomas Wayne, in his drunken stupor, murdered Joe Chill, and then went on to trying to catch the Joker, and became Batman of this universe, having a theme of eradicating the criminal element within Gotham. Now, his version of Batman is a little less fancy than Bruce's because he doesn't have all the gimmicks and toys that Batman does. He just sticks to his fists and his guns. He does lurk in a cave, but there's no Batmobile, there's no Batplane. If he ever needs to get around, he uses the city or he uses the Wayne jet. In his grief of losing Bruce, he quit being a surgeon and started running some casinos that make him a lot of money, so it keeps his wealth intact for him to fight crime. But the Flash shows up and needs his help to fix things that he mucked up. He just doesn't know that he mucked it up yet. So Thomas Wayne helps the Flash get his powers back, recreating the accident that turned him into the Flash, but it's only successful on the second time, because the first time they fry Flash like a very crispy piece of bacon. Meanwhile, in the universe, Wonder Woman and Aquaman had an affair, and then they started a war over it because Wonder Woman killed his wife Mara, and now seemingly it's the Atlanteans versus the Amazon. But Thomas agrees to help the Flash because in a world where this doesn't have to exist and his son lives, he'll do anything to make that happen. At the end of that story, they do seemingly fix it, and Flash goes back and stops himself from saving his mother, resetting the paradox from even happening. But of course, that can't be the end of the story, because somebody decided to keep that paradox in a limbo state. That Thomas Wayne is seemingly frustrated that saving his son didn't work, and is confused at why it didn't work. Sets out trying to investigate why the Flash didn't fix it right, but also develops the attitude that it doesn't matter anymore. This Earth shouldn't exist, so none of his actions will have consequences if he can just set it to where Bruce lives. In DC Comics, when Dr. Manhattan was overseeing all of the DC multiverses, and was the one responsible for keeping the paradox in limbo, Bruce Wayne of our universe ends up finding a snow globe with this paradox trapped inside of it. Meanwhile, Thomas Wayne inside the snow globe is trying to figure all of this out and fight the Joker and his version of Two-Face, which isn't Harvey, by the way, it's his wife. Bruce Wayne is trying to preserve this universe after finding it in the snow globe because he selfishly wants his father to live. But because Thomas won't accept it as a reality, it's crumbling within itself. Eventually, that Earth disappears, but not before the Reverse Flash, who gets revenge on Thomas Wayne for killing him in the Paradox event, by ripping him out of that universe at the last minute and dropping him in our universe, where he devises a plan that Bruce shouldn't be Batman. He needs to be happy. But in order for him to give up being Batman, he has to have a reason to give up. So he seemingly teams up with Bane to put in a series of schemes and plans that ultimately make Batman happy. He found love with Catwoman, and they're about to be married. But then they seemingly have to rip all of that away and drive Bruce to the lowest point that he possibly can, just so the only possible way for him to be happy is to give all of it up. But Batman doesn't give up. He finds a new meaning to be Batman. That although Batman was born out of this pain and being alone, he's not alone anymore. He has a Bat family that depends on him, people that love him, and he in return. So Batman fights out against Thomas Wayne, his father, and Bane, and prevails. Now may I present the Arkham Knight. Now, although the Arkham Knight is not officially Batman, Jason Todd, the true identity of the Arkham Knight, has been portrayed as Batman before. In the Battle for the Cowl event, he takes on the mantle of Batman when Batman seemingly dies and disappears, and becomes this dark, twisted, brutal Batman, going against everything that his adoptive father ever taught him, perverting the ideals of Batman. But I feel like I have to back up just a little bit. Now, Jason Todd was the second Robin, who took over from Dick Grayson after Dick Grayson went off to college and joined the Teen Titans. Now, from a fan base, Jason Todd was not very well liked. And so DC Comics came out with a thing that at the end of an issue, the Joker has kidnapped Robin, and there's 2 phone numbers you can call. One phone number is to keep Robin alive. The other is to kill Robin. So fans had to call into either number, and those would cast your votes. And so DC went about writing 2 different endings for the next book, and would run the one that had the most calls. Well, fans hated Jason Todd so much, they voted to kill him. So the Joker killed Jason Todd. and it became one of Batman's greatest failures, and has haunted him ever since. Jason Todd is later revived, and took on the mantle of the brutal Batman, and eventually the Red Hood, which was a moniker used by the Joker, seemingly mixing and matching everything that Batman had ever taught him with what he has construed with everything that Joker has ever taught him, and goes about trying to show Batman that all of his ways don't work, because the criminals always get back up, and you have to put them in the ground if you want crime to stay there. And ridding crime is a fool's errand, a pipe dream. You have to control it. As the Arkham Knight in the Arkham Knight video game, you're going through Gotham City with Scarecrow holding the city for ransom, and this new character comes on the scene with his own private military force, and seemingly looks like Batman. All of the militiamen are even making comments about how much he kind of looks like Batman, acts like Batman, knows all of Batman's tricks. Arkham Knight is even openly mocking Batman to knowing all of his tricks when he's not actively trying to kill him, because the Scarecrow would like to embarrass Batman first.
Always defending the weak and the helpless. That's what I like about you. Predictable.
And asks the Arkham Knight to have patience, which he's not very good at throughout the entirety of the game. Unlike in the comics where Jason was held in a warehouse and seemingly was blown up by a bomb and later revived by a Lazarus pit, but due to the effects of being beaten with a crowbar over and over and over again, suffering traumatic brain damage, the Arkham Knight's version was held captive for months by the Joker, being beaten and traumatized and tortured, even branded, and then brainwashed by the Joker, developing a kind of Stockholm Syndrome, making it his life's goal just to have revenge on Batman for not saving him and replacing him so soon, feeling like he was never good enough and wasn't enough for Batman. Now, the Joker had led Batman to believe that Jason was dead, and has tried to help Jason ever since, in both comics, games, movies.
You did this to me.
I'm sorry.
You left me to rot in that abandoned wing of Arkham for over a year. With him.
It's not too late. We can fix this. Together.
In newer comic stories, the Red Hood is now a good guy versus the anti-hero that he made himself out to be, but does have a rockier relationship with Batman just because Batman does see it as his greatest failure, and Jason unwilling to accept that Batman could never kill the Joker for him. But as Batman put it in Under the Red Hood,
You don't understand. I don't think you've ever understood.
What? What, your moral code just won't allow for that? It's too hard to cross that line?
No! God Almighty, no! It'd be too damned easy. All I've ever wanted to do is kill him. A day doesn't go by when I don't think about subjecting him to every horrendous torture he's dealt out to others, and then end him.
Aw, so you do think about me.
But if I do that, if I allow myself to go down into that place, I'll never come back.
putting a lot in perspective of a lot of Batman's enemies, he treats with the compassion that they don't deserve, because if he didn't, he would become them. And Jason didn't grow up the same way that Dick Grayson did, because by that point, Batman had kind of gone in a slightly different direction and treated Robin more like a soldier than he did a partner or even a son. He took Jason in so that way he wouldn't become a criminal like his father. First time they ever interacted, Jason was stealing the wheels off the Batmobile. But Jason, no matter which disguise he wears, whether it's the Red Hood or Batman or even the Arkham Knight, he still twists and perverts all of the training that he had from Bruce with his anger. I didn't want to save the best for last, because in this case, the best for last would have indicated the best murderous psychopath version of Batman, but if there was a best worst version, it would probably be this one, because he has the highest kill count of anyone else on the sheet that we're drawing today, and pretty much anybody else in the multiverse of Batman that I could talk about, but I'm not talking about today. This is the Batman Who Laughs. Now, the Batman Who Laughs comes from an Earth where he decided to break his no-killing rule, and the Joker had a contingency plan. If the Joker was to ever die, he would release a toxin that would affect anybody within his body. Now, Joker has always tried to goad Batman into killing him, and he finally got his wish, and this infection is slowly turning this version of Batman into the Joker. At such an alarming rate, he can't fix it. Now, the toxin slowly corrupts Bruce into killing the rest of the Bat family in his universe, and going on to kill the rest of his world. He then travels the multiverse and killing other worlds and collecting other evil Batman such as himself, locating the Prime Batman, and challenging him to a battle of wits, of which this particular Batman has all of the cunning, intelligence, and master planning of Batman, but all of Joker's depravity and ruthless, chaotic antics. If Batman's greatest nightmare is becoming like the Joker, this is that nightmare realized. Batman is always the strategist for the Justice League. He developed contingency plans to neutralize should any Justice League member get out of bounds or turn evil. Keyword is neutralize. In being the ultimate Boy Scout and always prepared, he has a contingency plan for everything. Side tangent for just 1 second. There's a storyline where Batman developed all these contingency plans, and then Vandal Savage comes in and steals all of these plans and makes them lethal. But because he twisted the plans and tweaked them, they're no longer Batman's plans, so Batman was able to tweak them back into saving the Justice League from any mortal injuries and save his friends. The only contingency plan he doesn't have is for himself. The Batman and laughs, he killed his entire world's Justice League, and found regret in the fact that in his world, he could only kill Superman once because of all of the contingency plans he could have to even kill Superman. When he came to the Prime Batman's Earth, he came up with a new scheme, taking a twisted magic metal that he found within his travels across the multiverse and even living in the dark multiverse. He tweaked the Joker's toxin along with some improvements of his own and imbued it into this metal and turned it to where it could specifically infect other members of the Justice League, turning not only the Batman who laughs, but having a Superman that laughs, and a Wonder Woman that laughs, and so on and so forth, creating a dark, twisted Justice League of his own. He even infected our continuity's Bruce Wayne just to show that he could be just like him. Going up against himself, even from a multiversal standpoint, still very hard to do because he's never developed a contingency plan for himself. And with one such version having the mind of also the Joker, he had to find ways to bend and twist himself into madness just to understand what he would do under those circumstances. But the Batman Who Laughs has his versions of Robins called Crows, which look like cackling gremlin versions of the Robins, and wears this spiked visor around his head because it allows him to see dark multiversal matter sprawled in a universe. He did a lot of multiversal traveling with one Batman in particular who is called the Grim Knight because he's a lot more like the Punisher than he is Batman. In the Arkham Knight video game, we're kind of laced with a very similar situation where that Batman, our Batman, that we all know and love, could have become like the Joker and been this unstoppable force. In Arkham City, the game, you get poisoned with the Joker's blood and you seemingly cure it, only to find out that you cured part of it. But the Joker still lingers and is now imbued in his mind, talking in his ear, and he feels like he's slowly turning into the Joker, letting his anger get the best of him, pushing his rules and boundaries, just like the Joker would do in any situation that he ever encountered with Batman, is get him to break his one rule. We find our Bruce having to come to terms with himself and fighting back his own personal demons, because the truth of Batman is he's always known it would be so easy to kill all of the criminals, to end them where they stand and have them never come back to haunt Gotham or himself. But he knows he'll never come back. That every time he walks the edge of that abyss, he can't blink. Because truly, his pain fuels his will, and he has the greatest willpower of anyone, maybe even rivaling Green Lantern on occasion. But it's the love that he has to leave the world better than he found it that makes him truly unstoppable, and that force of will is what cured himself of the Joker. In a twist of fate, I present you with the son of Batman, Damian Wayne. Now he eventually, in a spiraling continuity, in a such future where Armageddon happens and is about to destroy everything, Damian Wayne, after losing his father in such battle, makes a deal with the devil to become Batman, keep Gotham safe, becoming the Batman 666. Now I'm drawing him as Damian from Injustice, for a number of reasons, one of which is I wanted to try to even out the fighting field a little bit, but also because in Injustice 2, Damian Wayne is a big part of the Injustice games because he killed Nightwing in that universe, becoming Nightwing, working under the regime of Superman. After Superman has forgone his quest for truth and justice and has become a tyrant to the world, and is not above killing criminals like the Joker. In which Damian agrees with him because Damian was raised by assassins. I mean, Damian Wayne's mother, Talia al Ghul, whose father is Ra's al Ghul, head of the League of Shadows, trained Damian till he was almost Bruce's age when Bruce lost his parents, and then he got to go live with Batman and Bruce and be trained under Batman instead of a bunch of killing cutthroats. It took a long time for that bloodthirsty Damian to become more of the dynamic duo team-up Batman and Robin that we all know and love. Part of the only reason that worked is because in and around the time that he was becoming Robin, Bruce Wayne seemingly died. And Dick Grayson had to take on the fold of Batman, switching the dynamics of Batman and Robin, being Batman the more lighthearted, sarcastic of the two, and Robin being the more dark and brooding one. When Bruce finally came back, Robin had kind of leveled out his bloodthirstiness, but that compulsion is always in the back of his mind, because he was trained to just think that way. And when he became Batman, he went right back to where he was, even though he promised his father he'd never do it. His version of Batman is hunted by the police, and he has rigged all of Gotham to be the ultimate utility belt, having rigged multiple buildings and alleyways with explosives and other gadgets that he can use. Damian has always felt like he's torn between both sets of parentals, one of which stands for justice and hope, where the other sees those as a weakness. Now, Damian has long abandoned the League of Shadows, but he doesn't always buy into Batman's philosophy all the time. Because he does think it would be simpler if the villains just weren't around anymore to cause trouble, and often has to be talked down by, say, Nightwing or Tim Drake. But despite being robbed of his childhood, Bruce has always tried to create a family dynamic for Damian and having the support that he never had when he was a kid, which has always conflicted Damian of which mantle he would one day head up. The legacy of his father as Batman, or his legacy of his grandfather as head of the Demon.
Go ahead.
For the League of Shadows.
Finish me. You were trained to kill your enemies, weren't you? It's what you want. It's what I would do. It's what your grandfather would do. Well, do it!
No. I'm my father's son, too. I'm Robin. Mother.
I present to you the Batman of Nightfall. John Paul Valley was picked by the Order of St. Dumas to be God's perfect soldier. He was originally debuted as the character of Azrael, who would go around dealing their swift hand of justice. Carrying what is often a fiery sword, is deemed as a knight crusading on a mission of God to save Gotham. When he encountered Batman, obviously Batman doesn't like the killing policy, so he goes to odds with Azrael and finds out that the Order of St. Dumas had genetically built Azrael, or John Paul Valley, to be programmed to be their perfect killer and not a knight crusading for God's plan. He was able to break what hold and brainwashing that they had done to John Paul Valley. Or so Batman thought. Because a little while later, Bane had psychologically traumatized Batman and ended up breaking his back to where Bruce couldn't be Batman for a while. And he needed someone to fill in. And John Paul Valley stepped up. Because Nightwing didn't want to do it because he had grown up and become his own crime fighter in his own right and didn't want to be Batman. And Robin Tim Drake at the time was still too young. So he became Batman and defeated Bane and started developing his own tech and hardware, resembling more of a robotic armor. But over the course of his time as Batman, his old sense of justice started rearing its ugly head. And even though Robin was around to keep him in check, eventually John Paul Valley got sick of this and locked Robin up in the Batcave, going as far to let criminals die, which resulted in a hostage dying. feeling that he was divvying out true justice. So Nightwing and Robin teamed up to try to take down this new Batman, but ultimately Bruce had to come back and be Batman once again, blaming himself for not training John Paul Valley to be the best Batman that he could, making sure that mentally he was capable of the job. This version of Batman's more brutal tactics ended up antagonizing Batman's long friend, Jim Gordon. So Bruce Wayne had a lot of relationships to fix when he came back. In the Arkham series, Azrael is a side mission where you seemingly have to track him down in Arkham City only for him to tell you this prophecy of doom that's coming to Gotham.
I knew you would find me.
It wasn't hard. You left me a map. Who are you and what do you want? Why are you watching me?
We have been given many names, but you will come to know me as Azrael, loyal servant to the Order of Saint Dumas.
Just what I need. Another secret society.
I bring a message. Dark days are coming, Batman. The prophecy is coming true. You are the warrior who will close the gates of hell. You are the one who will save this day. And in doing so, events will occur that you cannot stop. From the ashes of Arkham, the fires will rage and Gotham will burn. And you will burn too.
I don't believe in fairy tales.
Believe what you will. The message has been delivered. We will meet again.
And then in Arkham Knight, you seemingly have training sessions with him to see if he can be groomed up to be the successor, where you get to analyze his fighting patterns and his thought patterns to find out what subliminal messaging he's received of orders to kill Batman. And have a choice at the end of this side mission where you can either choose to try to kill Batman, which Batman takes down Azrael with ease and locks him up at GCPD, or to fight your inner demons and break your sword and go about getting revenge on the Order of Saint Dumas themselves. And the Order themselves just wanted to divvy out their own justice without Batman interfering. But as his time as Batman, John Paul Valley was able to fool a lot of people into believing that he in fact was Batman. A lot of people just believed that because of the whole Bane situation that he had become dark and depressive and developed a new style to things. Some people even appreciated the more violent stroke against criminals. Catwoman was not fooled at all. Despite the robotic armor covering up all of his body, Catwoman's strong sense of women's intuition and sense of smell led her to believe it wasn't the same Batman at all. But Nightfall was a good thing to name it, because he was still no match for the Dark Knight. Now, what are we doing? I think I'll let Batman explain.
Evening the odds.
That's right, we're going to add some heroes to throw in the mix of helping our Caped Crusader. Now, Batman and Robin have always been the symbolic dynamic duo, the epitome of teamwork in more of a lighthearted crime-fighting caliber. This version of Robin being the third Robin, Tim Drake. He's the only one that originally didn't suffer any tragedy before becoming Robin, but later had tragedy thrust upon him throughout his course as Robin, whether it being directly related to him being Robin, or just mere happenstance. Tim Drake saw Batman going down a dark path when he lost Jason Todd, that he had to step up and become Robin so Batman would never go down that dark road, to avoid the temptation of becoming this dark and brutalized Batman that he fears he could be, being an anchor for him to not fall into the abyss. Robin reminds Batman that there is always hope. Coincidentally, there is a time where Tim Drake eventually adopts the moniker of Batman. In the course of these events, Batman is dead, and all of his friends are dead on the Titans, and he has reconstituted the gun that killed Martha and Thomas Wayne and turned it into a weapon of vengeance upon the criminals and scourge of the underworld of Gotham, much like Thomas Wayne Batman. Now, these turn of events happen because Tim Drake was thought to be dead, but was really bamfed into a pocket dimension by Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen, after seemingly sacrificing himself to save his friends and family, eventually getting to return to his reality only to find everything that he loved is now gone. Now, with the help of the real Tim Drake and the Bat family, they were able to reconstitute and bring their Tim back to reality and end up fighting against this tragic reflection of what he could be and make it to where that reality never even happens. So that way Tim could decide himself what kind of hero he could be, whether he was destined to be Robin or the Red Robin, or even adopting the moniker of the Grey Ghost, even having the option to quit all of this and just focus on school, not letting his destiny define himself as becoming Batman. His detective skills almost rival the Dark Knight himself. He's a natural at it, if a little impulsive for being on the younger side. But even though Batman accepted that Batman is darker without a Robin, he does seemingly leave Tim out of things just to keep him safe, because he doesn't want history to repeat itself, making it harder for Tim to live up to the Robin name, but he's earned it 10 times over. In the animated series, the Tim Drake presented itself in more of a Jason Todd origin story dynamic, where his father was a criminal working with Two-Face, became the new Robin after interjecting himself, all the way up until one fateful night, Harley Quinn kidnapped him, and Tim Drake was seemingly tortured by the Joker and turned into a Joker Jr., in which Tim, or Joker Jr., had to result in killing the Joker to save Batman. He got a lot of needed help from doctors and therapists, and gave up being Robin forever. In that same universe, when Bruce Wayne was older and had to use a advanced Batman suit in order to still crime fight, in trying to save a hostage one night, he seemingly is having a heart attack in the middle of fighting all these guys, that he has to result in scaring a criminal with a gun, and it's in that moment that he vows to never again be Batman. That although his will is strong, his body is not, showing us that of all the Robins, all of the potential candidates to take up the mantle, that Bruce Wayne is really the only one with the will to overcome that temptation of killing, not taking the easy road, not letting that pain define him in a way that is not as productive to his mission to make it to where no 10-year-old boy ever has to live without his parents because of some punk with a gun. There's a deleted scene that never made it into the Flash movie where Michael Keaton's Batman gave up being Batman because he seemingly killed a criminal in front of his son. And although directors and producers think that the no-killing rule shouldn't apply to cinema because of the coolness factor, that scene could have showed a really real twist to that cinema history of Batman, where, in fact, the Christopher Nolan trilogy took up quite the mission to make sure that Batman did not kill, and really cemented the idea into a lot of newer fans coming into the folds at the time. Which brings us to Catwoman. Is one of those off and on again criminals, hero, anti-hero, works with Batman, works against Batman. But as she would put it,
about the whole no guns thing. I'm not sure I
and
feel
it's
as
often
strongly about it
that
as you
mentality and her mentality of going back and forth between her criminal nature and trying to live up to Batman's expectations of being a hero that drive a wedge in their relationship. One time she was seemingly reformed and ended up killing Black Mask, what she felt was a necessity for a greater good. And although Batman didn't crucify her for it, it ruined their relationship for a number of years. There's a storyline where they seemingly get married and are happy for a number of years, and she gives up all of her criminal ways, suppressing that side of herself, where Bruce Wayne eventually passes away from cancer. Her first act after burying her husband is going out and finally killing the Joker, because she promised she would never do it while Bruce was alive, in which Bruce and Selina's daughter have to then track down her mother for murder. But even with all of these characters perverting the way that Batman thinks and acts and doesn't quite see it the same way that he does, they've all been touched by him in some way. Batman has helped a lot of people. Even though the version of Thomas Wayne that we talked about was not as good as, you say, our Batman, there's a version of Thomas Wayne as Batman where he takes up the mantle of Batman from his son. Because in that universe, Batman's parents didn't die, because it was saved by this crime fighter who was Batman from an alternate reality, and was inspired by that version of Batman to then become his version of Batman, and was killed in a world-saving moment along with Superman and Wonder Woman, to which his father takes on the legacy of his son and doesn't use guns. There are countless Robins and reformed Robins that have inspired to live by what Batman has taught them. He set a truly honorable example. Now, I'm not saying that Batman hasn't ever been tempted to use guns or kill his enemies. The temptation is there all the time, but Bruce fights within himself every night. The difference between revenge and justice. There have even been times when his body has been possessed by a ghost, and others have died by his hand, or even mind-controlled by alien forces, like in Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. But even in Suicide Squad The Justice League, Harley Quinn's commentary tells us everything that we need to know about Batman.
Please, help me! Hey, Bruce! Still using shadows to scare the crap out of us criminals, huh? Don't sweat it. Batman doesn't kill people.
When faced with the maniacs that he puts in Arkham, when faced with his parents' killer, when faced with the Joker, a character who has thrown everything in the book, has twisted and joked and mutilated, has hurt, shot, stabbed, broken his way into hurting every single one of Batman's friends and allies, innocent bystanders, Batman would still choose to help him, save him, even from death, in a chance that he could be redeemed. It's that belief that everybody has a chance at redemption that keeps him going. And as far as Batman's thoughts on guns, well, let him tell you for himself.
I'm sorry, sir, but I was wondering what you wanted to do with your gun collection. You keep moving it, and I keep tripping over it.
Sorry, Alfred. I suppose I should take it to the police.
It's a bag full of tragedy, that's what it is. I don't know how you can even handle them.
You have to know your enemy, Alfred. I'd never use one, but even I can appreciate the attraction of a gun. The heft, the sleekness, the cool steel, the precision, and the power. The power to change lives, history. The power of God.
And it's that healthy respect that he has for life, in which he chooses to not use guns. He's mortified at the idea that by his actions, somebody could be harmed in a way that might face their mortality. That he has to strive to be the epitome of human perfection, has to be the fastest, the strongest, to stop those 2 bullets ringing in that alley from that one night in Crime Alley. And whereas some versions of Batman, multiversal Batman that are not Bruce Wayne, have sit there and used Joe Chill's guns for more revenge purposes, justifying themselves as an instrument of justice, when Bruce Wayne in our continuity gets a hold of that gun, he melts it down and turns it into a armor plate for himself, where the very thing that created him as a child is now also defending him. Hope you've enjoyed coming to my TED Talk, and even though there's a long, construed history of when he first started holding guns like The Shadow, because Bob Kane was inspired by such radio dramas that he thought it would be cool if Batman had a gun, to the evolution of this character having the no-gun policy, the fans having the forever debate, should Batman kill or not kill. I don't expect to make a dent in either direction. But I do hope that you found this video interesting and you learned some cool things about other Batmans and how they've constructed a very simple mission. If you drew along, please post in the comments below. I'd love to see it. This will be the last video like this for a while. These kind of videos have not been as popular, so I'm going back to the drawing board, as it were, to try to come up with something a little bit more interesting for you guys. I've had a little bit more success on the Reels side of YouTube, so I'm going to try to find a way to spice those up and make it more interesting for those to watch. If you're as nerdy as me and have been trying to figure out who would win in this 9-way fight, let me know in the comments below, who do you think would win? If you have an opinion one way or another, should Batman or kill or not kill, drop it in the comments below. If you have a favorite version of Batman that has been on the killing spree once or twice that I didn't mention in this particular video. Trust me, I know they're out there. If you've got a favorite, though, and like to drop that in the comments below and talk about it, go right ahead. Love to talk about it with you. Obviously, this was a longer video, so thank you for sticking to the end if you did. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.